The topic is mind my boundaries. What should my personal boundaries be?
Thank you so much, Miriam. And thank you for the opportunity. It's a privilege and an honor to be here. Thank you so much. So, boundaries for me stem strictly from the place of self-care. There's a lot of talk these days about, my space, it's me, and it seems as if people are beginning to sound very self-centered, individualistic, and selfish. That is not what I'm suggesting. I agree that we must look out for one another, but critically, we must pay attention to our wellness and sense of self. What I mean by self-care is this. For instance, I love my job, but you're not going to call me at 10:30 in the night to say to me, Mrs. Undu or Sister Chiadi, my husband. That's not fair. I need to sleep. I'm in my 50s. I'm not as young as I used to be. What happens if I take that call and the next morning my blood pressure pikes because my sleep has been disrupted? So I'm not being selfish, but I'm drawing a distinct boundary because I need to pay attention to me. What if I take that call and as a result of that, I'm disorganized and my whole day is thrown off and I can't achieve the things I need? No, I can't do that. I must place boundaries. What if I get in a conversation, an argument with you? And I say things I shouldn't say. Or I come down to levels I shouldn't come down to. So as a result of that, for self-preservation, self-care, self-protection, as it were, you must have very, very clear and distinct boundaries. This is where we do not cross. I love you, but can we stop here? There's an Igbo proverb that when a handshake extends the wrist, it becomes another thing. So you must be very clear. Where does the handshake stop? And it's important in every relationship. Career, personal, especially with significant people in your life. They have to know you don't cross that line. That will frazzle mommy. Like Mrs. R said, you don't come home to my house at midnight. You don't do that. It's still my house. I pay the bills. I call the shots. Do you understand what I'm saying? And it is not about being mean. It's not about being abrasive. It's not about being aggressive. It's about controlling your space. That is the only thing you have, especially in a country like Nigeria. That is the only thing you can control, your space. Can you just give me time to wind down and be me and not lose me? Because I have to be alive to be a mother. I have to be alive to be a wife. I have to be alive to be a pastor. I have to be alive to be a professional. Can I have time for me? Please don't cross. Mind the gap. That's what I always say to people. Yeah?
Thank you so much. Now I'm going to ask another question, especially when you talked about career boundaries and people calling. So I don't know if anybody experiences this. So COVID came with a lot of good afterwards when it comes to work, which was you can work from home, you can have Zoom meetings and all that. Fantastic. But another trend we saw with employers is because you are working from home now, the time is different. Before 5 or 6 or 7, you have closed. I've carried my bag. You can't get in touch with me. But now you know that your team lead can still send you WhatsApp message, and you're getting it at 7. You're getting at 8. People are bringing meetings at 8:13. I don't know if I experience it, so I don't know if people experience it. How do I mind that boundary and tell you that, bros, 6 has come now. Have we not closed? Because some meetings are at 9. Some meetings are at 7 a.m. because they say, should be Zoom. So how do we say, or how do we do it in such a way that I'm not going to lose my job, but the line is there?
So for me, the word I use is tact. Honestly, the Bible says, kind words turn away wrath. It said, well-placed words are like pleasant honeycombs. I can say to you, go to hell. And I'll say it in such a way you'll say to me, hey, Mrs. Undu, Where is the way to hell? I can say it so nicely. And for me, that is where maturity, wisdom, and, emotion regulation comes in. I'm not going to say to my boss, I beg your pardon, who are you? I'm going to say something like, oh my goodness, this my guy, you just love me too much. You make me feel as if I'm the only one that can do this work. But you know this woman, I'm getting old though. Don't mind me. 7 o'clock, sleep has started to catch me. Oh God, should we give it to another person? Let me call you tomorrow morning now. I've made a point. Very clearly, very subtly. My job is intact. My relationship with you is intact. But you now know that because of certain issues, or I can even say, sure, you know how you these men are. If my husband catches me with this one, another trouble, I beg go. I'm just saying, subtle things. I've put the ball back in your court. I haven't ruffled anybody's feathers, but I've made it clear that, you can jeopardize my home life, you can jeopardize my health, you can jeopardize, and you don't want to do that. I will wash your head in such a way. Ogami. Hey, now wow. Why do you love me like this now? Oh yeah, you know what we'll do? Let's give it to Ada. She will do it better. Does that make any sense to you? So for me, I always say tact, kindness, respect. Those are the critical ingredients to placing effective boundaries. You're not being abrasive, you're not being rude, you're not putting anybody down. You're just saying, you know what? This is just for my well-being. Hey, I'm the victim here. Please, pity me, you hear? But the message is passed strongly and firmly, and I promise you, the person will think again before trying to cross those lines. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm now going to come to Mrs. R, and I'm going to be talking about family boundaries, especially for us women. So there's just a lot going on. It's almost like we should be wearing a cape. You're supposed to be doing great at work. You're supposed to come home after the monster that is Lagos traffic and still be this mom, wife who has everything together. Your kids need your attention. Your husband needs your attention. It seems like you're a well everybody's drawing from and nothing is going back in. How can you be that mother, wife, professional, homemaker, and have the boundaries that keep you sane?
Wow, thank you very much. That could probably require more than today to answer, but I will touch on, let me give it a good try. I think that the woman, more than anybody else, really needs self-care, which is what Dr. Chadi has mentioned. And let me also seize this opportunity to say what a joy and a privilege to have you join me today.
Thank you so much.
We actually didn't schedule it, the way you put it in a diary, but we had it in mind. But when she arrived was just the time for the program. So it all fitted in, which is also God's wonderful way of arranging things for us. When I look at women, and I keep saying to women, you are the weaker vessel. The weaker vessel doesn't mean you're weak in character. But it does mean that the way God created us, He fashioned us differently from the men. He fashioned us to be delicate, to be, looked after. And I don't say this in the sense of not doing anything or being, I don't want people to interpret it as lazy or the queen who has to be pampered. No. Even the lady on the streets was created by God as a weaker vessel. So weaker, and explain again, doesn't mean weak in character. Because you see that if Eve had to be strong enough to get Adam to do what he did. Okay, so women have the power of influence. But you need to care for yourself, because when you get into an aircraft and they are making these announcements, say if oxygen mask drop, please put on your mask before even the infant. So you've got to be well enough to be able to take care of the people in your family. That doesn't mean that you're irresponsible. No. It just means, and we can't overemphasize the word self-care, care for yourself. Now, how does that translate in practical reality? I do think that sometimes, and I think I've said this in one of the prior conversations, because we present ourselves as capable of doing everything, then we are left to do everything. There was a lady within the construct of my office, and she said she was going to the market on a Sunday. She has some adult children. Now, this is just an example. And I said, are you going to the market on your own? She said, yes. I said, why don't you take one of the children with you? Even if the child sits in the car, even if the child just follows you without carrying a bag, we are introducing that child to notice what you do. And then on another occasion, a few ladies and I were standing outside church after service, and we just wanted someone to go to the barbecue stand and buy us our snacks. And we had a young, lovely teenager there, just in our company. But we reached out to call a protocol lady. So I said to the mom, she should go and buy us the snacks. She was willing, she was available, but nobody told her she could be responsible to provide that service. So sometimes we just need to allow people to help us and survey the environment and see who can do what we want. A delegation. Okay? Now, when you delegate, you give someone else the opportunity to grow, but you take a risk. But it's worth the risk to allow that person grow, because when they do, it's for your benefit. God the Father exists in the Trinity. God exists in Trinity. God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. You see a principle of distribution of power. So when I think like that, I think, why do human beings take it all upon themselves to do everything? Then God comes to the earth and delegates the rulership, the dominion of the earth to Adam. He took a risk. But that's the principle of delegation. So I think that we should look at operating like that. That's the principle. Now, take it down to being at home. I would usually encourage people to think, what is it that I'm the only person who can do? So the ladies in my office are here. I say to them, sit down, think first. Bukola, what is it that on your list, what is it that you alone must do? And start from there. It may be item 1 and 2. So item 3, 4 to 10. Can anybody else around you achieve it? Can the front desk lady do it? Can one of the ladies in admin make the tea? So assess, what is it in the family? Husband, children, what is it that if I don't do, the house would collapse? Then what are the things that other people can do and I can supervise them to make sure the objective is achieved? I think if women start that way, you would be able to eliminate. But we want to do everything. We want to go to the market. We want to go to do the school runs. I know it's not as simple as it is, but I always say the consideration starts with your mind. Can you change your thinking? If someone is going to work, and let me give another example, and you're expected to come home and cook, could you consider getting someone to cook for your house and put them in plastic containers for a week? But you cook the Sunday meal if your husband insists that there should be homemade food. Can you bring the food from the caterer? It would cost you money. But you then say to yourself, I'd rather spend this money and not buy a few more dresses. But the food is regular, it's made to taste because I'm supervising it. And it's well laid out on the table because I'm showing that I'm still responsible for homely duties. So that's the way I can. And then to add to what she said about the boss in the workplace. Sometimes the people you work for actually workaholics. And have you considered that they may need the strength of your boundaries to observe their boundaries? So, you're not called to work 24/7. Even God put a principle of rest in the Bible, not because God has to rest, but to show humans that you're not created to live like this. Now, a lady came to me once for counseling, and her problem was that, she considered it very spiritual, Dr. Chadi, to wake up every night at 3 a.m. to pray. You have to ask. And she says, the Lord woke me up. The question is it really the Lord, or is your stress bucket full? And you're beginning to cross into the
insomnia.
That's your forte, but you're beginning to go into the zone of insomnia. So I said to her, how long have you been waking up at 3 a.m.? She said, for months. Then I said, when do you wake up for work? 5 a.m. So I said to her, when you look at the traffic light out there, is it on red all the time? She said, no. I said, okay, if it's on red all the time, what would happen to the cars on the road? Extreme congestion. I said, that's what's happening to your mind. Because that waking up at 3 a.m. and not having enough sleep is a red light that is going to lead to a congestion. And that's going to affect a congestion in your mind that's going to ultimately affect your body. I'm not a psychologist, but that's how I can explain it in my own language.
So just to clarify what Mrs. R is saying, truly a lot of these things are a function of perception and thoughts. A lot of us women are raised to feel that, I'll call it, we're overly conscientious. We actually esteem ourselves more larger than we really are. We actually think we're more important than we are. But the analogy I always use is this: nobody is indispensable, including you. So you give birth to a child and you pass on, say for instance, that child will grow up.
Yes.
With and without a mother. A one-day-old child will thrive without their mother. So first of all, we should stop exaggerating our importance. We're not that deep, we're not indispensable. Life goes on with or without you. And by the way, I learned it in a very painful way. I found out how rapidly, hey girls, I can talk, right?
Yes, please.
How rapidly guys replace their wives when they die. They move on. And the argument is, well, life goes on. So just a tip, life can go on without you. Take a back seat and realize you're not as magnificent as you think you are. Humble yourself. You're not that important. You're not as relevant. You can be done without. It will help you tone down a lot of the stress you absorb. Honestly, there's a young girl I was speaking with. I'm very careful to use, so I'm going to tweak a couple of things for confidentiality purposes. And she says to me, I like the vegan food. I like, my family must eat holistic. My children, I don't like to buy, so I make their purees. I say, only you. I rejoice with you. You don't have house help. You don't have cook. You go to the market. You puree the tomato. You garlic it. You garnish it. You all this, only you. Oh, yes, because I really don't like all this. I said, I think you should rethink it. There are a couple of things you can do with help. And it's really not that large. Guess what? The next you say, Mrs. Zunzu, I gave my child Indomie. I said, from pureed to Indomie, that's quite a stretch. So you can see how borderline the girl was going off. But this is her idea of what an ideal mother does. She gives her children holistic, non-preserved, natural food. Good idea, but cool. If anything happens to you, that child will eat Indomie.
Thank you so much. And what you have just said, I think a lot of us, when you first get married, you know these things they tell us. Your husband must always eat home cooked meals. I remember when I was in university, someone that was asking me out, he said, oh, I grew up eating fresh soup every day. See, the Holy Spirit didn't have to tell me. I told myself, because I grew up, my mother cooks only once a week, Saturday. You will eat it till the end of the week. So I'm thinking in my mind, before, I'm saying, we should not sin here. And so there was nothing he could tell me. It don't go. As it's not happening. But I think a lot of us, that's the pressure we put on ourselves. And I like what you said, Mrs. R, and I'm going to talk about it a bit, where she says, the priority in your home. What is that one thing that only you can do? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? I think a lot of us, too, with our kids, we do so much that they could do. Because you are thinking, my mom, the thing she showed me, I'm not going to do that to my kids. And then you will now realize why your mom gave you that work and she lived to be 80. You understand? So I think I really like that in my head. I was already thinking in my head, make your priority list. What can I do? What can they do? I tell my kids all the time, you're taller than me now. So if you're taller than me, you can carry a bucket. If you're taller than me, you can carry heavy groceries. Because before you carry the heavy one, take the light one. And I looked at my son, I'm looking up at you. So if I can look up at you, you carry it. Now I don't carry anything. When I come from the car, I carry the key like my mom used to do. And you know what I'm saying? So, I beg, they give a star. So please, ladies, like she said, you're not the most important. You're not the most important. And I will share a personal thing also. Last year I had a major health scare. And I remember when I was, on support, and I was praying to God. I said, oh God, what will happen to my daughter? Because she's always saying to me, Mom, I have separation issues when I'm not with you. I was saying to myself, I was saying, oh God, even so, just as my daughter, please, my daughter, just, get me out of this. And this thing you said, I heard it clear as day. You said, I will save you, not because of her, because without you, she will thrive. I have seen her future, with or without you. She will do what I said she will do. So me giving you life, it's got nothing to do with her. It's because the work I sent you, you have not done half. So when you said that, it reminded me that, yes, sometimes we think we're so important in the lives of our husbands, of our children, and without us, it cannot. God got their life sorted. There's a destiny and a plan for them. You are just the vessel through which they came. So yes, if we realize that, I think, yes, we will not be as important in our own eyes. He is the most important. Now, Mrs. R, financial boundaries. Let's come to that, because sometimes it seems like the month is not ending fast enough. Because as they gave you today, you got the alert today, 2 days. You understand? You're back to 0.0. How should we deal with financial boundaries, especially with the reality of where we are as a country now? How do we have those boundaries?
Mm-hmm. I whispered a quick prayer to the Holy Spirit. Help me with this one. Let me start by admitting that we're in very difficult times. And biblically, we are assured that even in the famine, God will take care of his children. I've been also reading through Exodus, and what really continues to interest me is the fact that God, at some point, I think by the 4th plague, created a boundary or separation between Goshen and Egypt. So within Egypt, there was Goshen. So his people dwelt in Goshen, which meant that life continued for them in the midst of hardship with abundance, or at least all their needs were met. It goes to even the plague of extreme darkness. And the way some of the versions describe this is palpable darkness. You could touch the darkness. And one day I sat down and thought, what could this darkness be that was so intense, so acute? And I thought of COVID. So they were already confined because the plagues were coming one after the other, presumably. And then in their confinement, one of the plagues was darkness. And this darkness lasted 3 days. In the camp of Egypt, darkness, but in Goshen, light. That spoke a lot to me, that even in the midst of extreme hardship, God would provide. But I want to highlight here that he provides for our needs. And that we should start by actually accepting that no matter how rich you are, we are in a famine. What does that call for? It calls for readjustments. It calls for financial adjustments. It calls for reassessment of family values, family expenditure, personal expenditure. It calls for the possibility and the consideration that you may go from lace to Abeokuta Adire, to made in Nigeria. When Egypt had plenty, they were asked to store up for the famine. But the famine came. The plus was there was a storage. Okay. So bring it down to the practical application. If a lady was earning 1 million naira or 100,000, okay, let me start with 1 million because 1 million naira now is not a large sum. So if she was earning 1 million naira and the company has not increased her wages, but the price in the market has gone skyrocketed 3 times, 4 times. So what you used to buy for 1,000 is now 4,000 naira. What do I do? Again, we have to have family conversations. I have to have a personal conversation with myself. Even if you have a savings stored up like Joseph did, they were giving out food in measures. Clearly, they were not giving food in an abundant way. I imagine that people were given what they needed. So we have to sit down and say, in this 1 million that I used to earn, what is the priority? What is the need? So I tick off what is the excess. If I used to use 300,000 to deposit for a gold bangle, that clearly has to go. Then I have to look for the best fashion jewelry designer and drop that to 50,000. If my food involved things like sausages, bacon, fish, of course, that has to go. If the children were taking Ribena, you may still buy the bottle of Ribena, but you have to put in teaspoons rather than so you reduce the measure. But in other words, we have to face the reality of practical reassessment. I am told, a gentleman told me that he traveled to America via one of the West African countries and headed from further. Now you may have to do Ethiopia if you were doing direct, because going through Ethiopia or going on Egypt Airline is so. In local parlance, they say condition make crayfish bend. But that is it. So how I can describe what is happening is like we are in a war without the ammunition. Because in a war, I went through the Civil War. I can remember, even though I was a child, you had to ration food. You couldn't live like normal, but it wouldn't last forever. That's right. It wouldn't last forever. So it's not that you begin to do things by faith. You don't send a child by faith to America when the foreign exchange is 1,100 to $1. It's either you have the savings enough, or you have available property you can dispose of. But it would not be, I don't think God is expecting us to operate in that faith level. No, it's not realistic.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I like the practical part of breaking it down to what do you earn? What do you have? And what struck me from what she said is have a conversation. I think sometimes as parents, as moms, we shield our children from the reality Now, the danger of it is that they have an expectation. That expectation you can't meet anymore because things have changed. But you haven't had a conversation with them. And I think that's why a lot of teenagers, because I'm having friends who their kids, who have older kids than mine, who are saying, their kids are, it's almost like they want to kill themselves because the expectation from when they entered school was you're in a British school and of course you're going to the UK. At no time have you brought the conversation that it's now covenant. And so when they get there, because they discuss among their friends, they are sharing, oh, I did this. Oh, you've been hearing it. We didn't say anything. And then suddenly when they finish, you tell them they're going there. You see, mentally they're not prepared. And because they are young, they're not even built to handle that information. And this is something that I have seen a lot of, because I have kids younger, but my friends have older kids. They are having that issue and saying, oh, don't they know how the country is? They don't know. Because our kids are inside the house. They don't know. They are watching Netflix, they're eating, the driver is taking them to school, and they're coming back. How would they know? They're not collecting a salary. You are collecting a salary. So the conversation she had, she just said, let's have those conversations. Let's have the conversations with her partners. The reality of where we live now. Can we still afford to live where we are? Can we even still afford to put them in the schools that they're in right now? Because schools are we have emails that say, we have a payment plan for you now. I've never heard that before. This is the first time. Whose school? Payment plan, yes. Yes, you can pay monthly. Or we'll send you to this microfinance place to collect a loan to pay. So I think it's hard. It's not what we want. It's not what we desire. But I think those conversations should be had so that we don't, this is the boundary. We're now saying that, well, for now, this is what it is until, like she said, it's not going to last forever.
Yeah.
It's not going to last forever.
Okay.
You want to contribute? You want to say anything?
Yes, I was going to say something. So for me, I think that the critical thing really now is authenticity. Unfortunately, a lot of us I don't want to sound rude. We're fake. We endorse fakeness. We model fakeness. And these things have a lasting impact on our children. I don't know what is wrong with saying to your child. First of all, let me start by saying that anybody that earns naira and spends pounds or dollars is a poor person. Today's economy. I don't care as long as you earn income in naira and what you're spending is pounds or dollars, you're poor. That's number one. Number two, can we just adapt to our reality? You're not defined by what you wear. You're not defined by where you live. The reason these things happen is because most women no longer have content. Yeah. When I was growing up, it was clear, your level. You see women who I remember in Freedom Hall back in the day, why would I be wanting to be where Mrs. R is now? How? For what? I lived in Surulere. She lived in Lekki. Boundaries. Know yourself is not a cost. That is where the problem begins to start. You see me today, you don't know I have a story. There's no market in Lagos that I don't know. From the growing up years. You go to Ido, you buy yam. You go to Mile 12, you buy tomato. You share with your friends. You go to Ojo, you buy cow. You share with your friends. Come on, can we get real? Life is process. Yes. Life is procedure. Why would you earn what you earn and you want your child to go to the kind of school Lagbaja's child is going to? Why? Do you earn the same thing? People want to have weddings. You want to model your wedding after somebody's wedding. I don't know, Buko. You know why? Because you don't know what the person earns. You don't know my story. So I say to people, can you maintain your lane? Everybody is coming from somewhere. Can you just arrange yourself and get used to your reality? This is what it is. For a period, it will get better. One day, myself, I will get to where Mrs. R is now. Abi? But until then, there are levels. Can we respect levels and boundaries? Does that make sense?
It does, it does. Thank you so much, Dr. Ched. Mrs. Ari, what's
Ochadi.
No, but you know what she said is, let's be sincere, it's real. It's the truth. And if we can't tell ourselves the truth, then why are we here? You know, we are judged by so much. Social media doesn't also help. And then I always tell people that remember that your friend's picture on social media, she took 15 and took the best one and posted. It's true. You are like this. Then filter too helps. So when we do that, or you're in your WhatsApp group with your old schoolmates, and then, you know, this person, they will say, congratulations, just made ED. You know, congratulations. Oh, they'll put the picture. Oh, did you see she's not the ED of this? You're looking at yourself, I'm not even manager yet. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of pressure. But the boundary you draw is, it will not affect me. I will be happy for you. Oh, well done, go girl, you know, black girl magic, well done. But see, this is where I am. I will guard my heart and guard my mental space and say, I am enough. I am enough. Where I am is enough. Will I go further? That's my dream, and I will go further. But you see, this seat I'm in, it's okay. It's enough for me, and I will. But if you go to what they are doing, how they are doing it, the headache. And Lagos has enough headache, just traffic alone. It's a spiritual thing. So we don't need any others to put yourself under pressure. And now talking about pressure, Mrs. R, the boundary of pressure. The boundary of saying, no matter what is happening, it's almost like I want to keep myself in a cocoon. The reality is that, our idea enter, but how do I keep that personal space that keeps my mental states healthy?
Let me touch on something Dr. Chadi said about authenticity and not being fake. It's so important. It's so important. The other day, I went out with a few friends of mine. I think there were 4 of us. So 3 and me, 4 of us. And we went to a nice restaurant. It was I called the lunch in celebration of my birthday. But I've known them for long enough. So I made up my mind that when we get there, everybody is paying their bill. Yes, now. And so when we got there, I said, we came, I invited you. It's my birthday lunch. But as you take your food, you choose your menu, your item on the menu, you are paying your bill. So how can? I said, I can't afford to do this today. They finished eating, thought it was a joke. So when I called because I knew that we're all semi-retired. So this bill, but for me, I'm not going to pay this money. Why? And when the waiter came, I said, give each lady her bill. And that's what it was. That's what I mean by, that's what I understand, to further give you an example of what Dr. Chad is saying. And then in terms of having honest conversation, which you picked up also. When I was growing up, I knew, maybe not in much detail, exactly what my parents were going through. They didn't hide it from us. The war going through, but what I remember is that in spite of whatever was going on, they tried to convey peace and that they were in stability and God. Let me give you an example. We were journeying from one part of Cross River to the other during the war. And it involved going on a canoe because Calabar had just been liberated. And we were in this canoe. I remember my adult cousins who lived with my adult sisters. I have one sister is 6 years older than I am and the other one 8. And then we had 1 or 2 cousins. In those days, You had your children, you had the cousins. So we'd all run to a village in Cross River to avoid all the artillery and all that. So it was now time to move from that village to Calabar. And they took us in a canoe, going through swamps. You know what time you have. But I don't remember the danger. What I remember was that my father was teaching us a song. And the song had to do with his own growing up and how the canoes were floating from side to side. That's how we got to Calabar. So we were not, I knew what was going on because there was constant conversation. This is the method that he utilized. When there was a major issue to solve at home, my dad would gather everyone after dinner in the sitting room and explain, this is what is happening. Can I have each person's opinion? What do you think? What do you think? And he will go through everyone's thinking. You were allowed to express your own contribution to that family problem. I'm not putting this out there as the best method. I'm just saying to buttress the fact that conversation is healthy. So I didn't feel left out. I didn't feel that I wasn't protected. I mean, I wasn't involved in family discussion. Then at the end of it, he will say, your mother and I will sleep over it, and in the morning we'll give you a reply. It could be something as little as we want to go on a holiday, and they're going to explain that everybody can't go. So according to the budget, 2 people will go or 1 person would go. Then the next morning, he will call because if this was on a holiday, during the holiday, he will call the meeting again over breakfast or later supper and give us their report. And he would explain why they took that decision. So nothing shocked me because I understood that this list you're bringing for your provisions could be altered based on last night's discussion. And he wasn't, and yet it wasn't that it was a family of lack. But everything was explained and you were carried along. So be free. And the children now know everything anyway. But when you explain, guess what? The child will tell you, oh, Mom, judging from what you're talking about, the Naira, I actually think it's a good idea for us to sit down. And your problem is solved because they arrived at the conclusion themselves. Yeah.
And they're smart enough to do it. Actually, they can plan it for you and say, okay, this or this. My daughter will say, okay, Mom, okay, can I have this or this? And I'm like, because I'm always like, no, these 3 things, it can't be 3. 1, which one do you really, really, really want? Why? Because I don't have money for all 3. Yeah. And then she sits down and thinks and says, okay, I want this. It's easier for her to make the choice because she lives with it. If I say this is 1, then she's like, well, I would have ordered the other one. So this way, put them in a conversation. And honestly, the stress on your own mental state it's really, I have learned it just makes you sleep better. You know, we will worry, no doubt, but at least you sleep better.
Please let me add something briefly. You know, if the child was really expecting to go abroad, a soft pedal may be to say, during the summer, we would send you to a summer camp. So if you can afford that, so university is going to be Ghana, or it's going to be Pan-Atlantic, but during the holidays, you can go to your cousins for 3 months or for the 2 months, and we'll put you in a summer camp. So the child feels that you have made a concession that the family can afford.